Welcome. Today I am addressing questions that you have submitted on my Instagram stories. And there are many questions, so I really want to dive right in and answer as many as I possibly can today. And if you do want to ask a question that you want me to answer here, make sure that you keep an eye on my Instagram stories since that's where I pick the questions from. All right, so first question that I'm answering today is what's the proper mindset in dating at 36 years old coming from a failed engagement? First things first, I'm sorry to hear about the relationship ending. When you're coming out of a commitment like being engaged, there are three things that I'd be looking at. The first one is I'm assuming that you feel like the clock is ticking, that time has passed, and now you have to start over again. I'm just assuming this, having had conversations with people in a very similar spot as you, and also having had clients go through the same thing. So if you resonate with that, if you feel like time has passed and you have to start all over again, I know it's easier said than done, but if you are coming out of a commitment, like being engaged, let yourself space and time to process that. When we come out of a relationship, when we end a relationship, we typically experience grief. And the person might still be here on this earth. It is still grief. There is a relationship ending. There is, memories that have gone by. There are things that you will not experience again. And so there is some sort of grief involved. And if you're familiar with the 5 stages of grief, that's something that is a process to go through. I would definitely recommend looking at grief in itself and going, where am I in the stages of grief? That can be a longer process for some, it can be shorter for others, but do let yourself that space. Why? Because that will help you then show up more authentically and more at peace in any other relationship that you then enter. When you're going into the dating world, you're going to show up very differently if you've had space to process the relationship that has ended, especially if it was a very hard breakup. Second, I would clarify, what is it that I want and that I'm looking for in a person now that I'm entering the dating world? Do I want to casually date? Do I want something serious? So what am I looking for? And what type of person am I currently looking for? So really clarify that for yourself and ask yourself, what do I want as I enter the dating world? That's second. Clarify that for you so that you have the right approach as you enter the dating world. When we know what we want, it's much easier to attract that as well. And it's much easier to spot what we want to attract. Third one, and from experience with clients, what I do recommend is to look at what contributed to the failed engagement, to the relationship ending. And I know this might not be the easiest step, as you might be going through memories, you might be thinking about situations that have passed. And so I would do this as a really third step here. I wouldn't necessarily do this as the first one before even processing any type of emotions that you are potentially going through. What I would do here is have an honest look at why the relationship ended. And I'm saying this not to blame your partner or to go, oh, that's what they did wrong, or this is why it ended because they did XYZ. There are many situations, but generally speaking, I'm looking at the lens of accountability. What was my role in this relationship? How did I show up in this relationship? I know there are situations where it is best to break up. It has a lot to do with the other person, yes. And the third step here is really looking at what role did I play so that I avoid repeating the same dynamics in another relationship. I'm going to be really honest with you. I have had experiences, conversations with people who have had not just one failed engagement, but 2 and even sometimes 3. And this is not to scare you, but it's just to say that we do want to look at how did I contribute to the ending of the engagement so that I can set myself up for success when I go out in the dating world and start to commit maybe even to someone. So this could be looking at your communication styles, looking at how you communicate certain things, how you communicate your needs, how you set boundaries, how you have expressed yourself when you were triggered, how you dealt with conflict. All of those things are things that we bring to a relationship. If you've been here for long enough, you know that I really look at what our part is in a relationship. And you'll hear me say a lot that we are the common denominator in all of our relationships. And I wish I had known this beforehand. And that's what also led to me potentially breaking up with my now husband. I did not look at my side of things. We do need to look at how we're showing up in a relationship. And that's what I would recommend you to do, especially since you're mentioning dating mindset, is how am I showing up in my relationships? How am I showing up with someone? What potentially contributed to the end of this other relationship so that I can avoid repeating the same dynamics? Yes, if I'm with someone else, things will be a bit different for sure, but I can look at how I'm contributing to a relationship, how I'm showing up. That is one of the most important things that you can do, in my opinion, and also from experience, so that you don't repeat the same cycles. Because what I've noticed is you can be with different people, but again, the way you show up is pretty consistent. The patterns that we bring are consistent. We bring our communication styles, our conflict styles, our boundaries, our expectations to a relationship. And so that is the baggage that is common regardless of the person that we're with. That's what I would look at. And also, I have seen clients attract amazing partners once they've gotten very honest about how they showed up. And they worked on breaking unhealthy patterns that they were bringing that contributed to the breakdown of their relationship. So this is not necessarily the easiest, but it's a really essential thing if you're looking for long-term success. Again, first, letting yourself process. Second, clarifying what it is that you're actually looking for in the dating world. And third, having an honest look at the dynamics that you bring to the relationship, why the relationship ended, and your role in it. So that's where I would get very, very, very honest. Second question is what to consider before moving in to be together after doing long distance. Okay, so this will apply whether or not you're in a long distance relationship and you're considering moving in with your partner. 4 things here. First and most important thing is that this is a conscious decision, that it's free of resentment, that you are both okay with moving in together. And if one of you is making sacrifices to move in together, maybe you're moving to a different place, a different country, you're maybe moving away from family and friends, that this is a conscious sacrifice, meaning that you are fully okay with that decision. I've seen more than enough people sacrifice certain things and then resent their partner for it for decades. And that can literally kill a relationship. Resentment is a really, really big relationship killer. It disconnects you from your partner over time, etc. And so what I would recommend is, first of all, making sure that it is a conscious decision and you're both stepping into it, knowing what you're maybe leaving behind, what you're sacrificing. So it's free of resentment. You're both fully committed to moving in together and you're fully conscious of what that means for each of you. Again, if there are certain sacrifices that you're making, do that without the resentment. Make sure that you are fully okay with those choices before moving in together. When you want to move in together, it's very exciting. So I totally get that we sometimes don't think about that. But if you really sit down, make sure that you're making that from a very conscious place. All right. Second, do you want similar things in life, even if, for example, you have different personalities or different lifestyles? Do you want similar things in life and for your relationship? For example, do you believe in marriage? Do you want kids? All of these, let's say, big decisions, you do want to be aligned on that before you move in together so that you don't have bad surprises by the end and you're like, oh, we moved in together. You absolutely want to get married, for example. I absolutely don't. And that's where the big question is, what do we do? So that's where I would look at the big important topics. Do we want similar things on those? Third thing that I would look at before you move in together is, how is your relationship going now? Again, when you move in together or when you want to move in together, you're considering moving to the next step in your relationship, it's really exciting. But when you move in with someone, it also magnifies the stuff that might not be working already. And so it will magnify certain things. It will magnify in the sense of if something small is maybe bugging you, when you move in together, you're usually going to see that much more often. It will annoy you even more. You will start seeing sides of your partner that you didn't see before. And so again, it can be this wonderful experience. And you also want to be asking yourself, how is our relationship going now? Rather than hoping that the move will make your relationship better or will solve certain things. So really have an honest look at how are we doing? And if there's anything big that we need to be addressing, then let's do it before we move in together. Let's have the conversations now rather than later. And even if the relationship is actually going well, moving in together will bring up new experiences, will also bring up new challenges. And so the real question here is, who do I choose to do that with? Do I see myself moving in with this person and navigating new situations with them? Am I ready for that? And having an honest look, objectively speaking, at the relationship and how it's doing, without the thought of the move will solve XYZ thing if there are issues in our relationship. So that's what I would really recommend, is having that honest look at the relationship, how it's doing, knowing that a move can be a wonderful experience. It really can be, but it will also magnify certain things. And whatever wasn't working before won't be solved just from the move. So that's what I would be looking at. And fourth, so let's say final thing, once you've done all of those, once you've addressed those different points, you can then start looking at the logistics. For example, let's have conversations about how we want to manage our finances, how we want to split the chores, who wants to take care of what, who pays for what. Do we have a joint account? Do we have a separate account? Do we put money aside for groceries every week or not? How do we want to balance alone time, together time? So that's kind of the logistics of it. It's like day-to-day operations. How do we handle that? You can have a look at that for sure. And I think it's really important to have those conversations once you have addressed the big ones, the big topics, the big stuff that I've just discussed before. And one thing I will say is whenever you move into a new chapter of your relationship, you won't always have all of the answers. You can address many topics, you can have all of the conversations. Regardless of that, you won't always have all the answers. We can't predict the future. There are many new things that might come up. Not every day is the same. And so what I would recommend is, can we have conversations together? Can we have honest, open conversations together? Can we check in with each other from time to time and see how we're doing? And so if you're looking for a guide for that, I will link my free communication guide in the description. That's one that you can always use over and over again to ask yourself 6 specific questions to help you evolve in your relationship, check in with each other, make sure that you're on the same page, check in with how you're doing. As long as we have open communication and we're able to have the hard conversations, important conversations, that's what's most important, so that we can start building something that works for us as we move in together, because we're not going to have everything figured out. And so that's the real question. Can we have those conversations? Can we check in with each other? Are we able to do that? I'll link that resource in the description if you want some guidance, if you want a process and a structure. Also, before I go into the next question, this question reminded me of something Denis and I actually did before we moved in together, before we even got engaged, or maybe just after we got engaged. We took this couples assessment that gave us this personalized roadmap on our relationship and different areas of the relationship. We looked at our expectations, who will split what at home, what do we expect based on our upbringing, for example, our spending habits, who is a spender, who is a saver. We looked at our love styles, how do we prefer to feel loved. We looked at our conflict management styles, our strengths, our weaknesses that we bring to the relationship, and it really opened our eyes and helped us have the important conversations that we never even had thought of before. And so those would be things that I would recommend looking at before, is like having the important conversations about, again, do we want similar things in life? Is this a conscious decision? How is the relationship going now? What are our expectations? And those logistical questions as well that we can start to address. That's something that I remember being so crucial in how we grew together. And I just remember me sitting back in my apartment, we weren't living together, and just going through that roadmap. And it was just like, wow, like I never knew you were, let's say, the spender, or like I knew a little bit, but now I know that you spend because you value XYZ thing. Or, oh, you expect me to do XYZ thing when we move in together. I didn't think about that. I thought that was you, you know? Or how can we love each other better? How can we meet each other's needs better? And so it was just an incredible way to have conversations, and it was very eye-opening. And that's something you can do before moving in together. It was recommended by someone, so that's why we did it. We didn't necessarily think it was important, but it's crazy how these conversations beforehand can be really helpful before you move in, so that you're basically going into it as a team. You have opened your eyes on certain topics, and you're able to have flowing conversations. This is something that I still do with clients, with couples that come to see me. If you're looking for personalized support, if you're looking for a very customized roadmap for your relationship, and you want to work this together with your partner so that you're getting into your new life stage as a team, I'll link that in the description as well, how to work with me one-on-one. All right, so third question, how to take sex with your partner from bad to good? What I would start off here is asking you, what are your expectations? What do you define as good sex? There's this common belief that comes from movies, that comes from books, that comes from even social media, that sex should always be this hot, spontaneous thing where both people know what they each need, where they're in sync, where, you know, they just love the process. It's always smooth. And I'm not saying you can't experience that, but it tends to lead to this misconception as to how we create great, satisfying sex. The reality is that if we want sex to be good, we need to, first of all, release the perfection and instead really guide each other. What do we each need? What do I like? What do you like? Let's explore this together. It won't always be perfect. It might be messy at times. But if we release that expectation that it should always be a certain way, then there's a lot of room for exploration, a lot of room for growth, and that leads to more connection, more trust, more intimacy, not just in the bedroom, but just in general. We become more bonded. In order to have good sex, you need to first go through a phase of exploration. Yes, maybe your first couple of times will be amazing. Maybe then you settle in a routine, you move in together, whatever it is, and you start to go, how do we revive this again? Be curious, explore, learn, teach, tell each other what you like, explore together if you're not sure. If you can do that, that creates a lot of safety, that creates a lot of connection, and those are basic human needs. So it's really important to have that. And I know that's not what movies depict. Everything is just smooth and everything is just perfect. That's not reality. Yes, it can be like that sometimes, absolutely. But if you're looking to take it from bad to good, that's what I would suggest. I would also add, what is happening outside of the bedroom? How do you interact on a day-to-day basis? Do you feel loved? Do you feel appreciated? Do you feel wanted? Do you feel seen? That also plays a role as to even how ready you feel to take sex from bad to good. And so if you're looking to shift things in the bedroom, I'd also look at what happens outside the bedroom. And last thing I'll say for this one is, and I'm saying this from experience, this will resonate with some, will not resonate with all, but if this does resonate, I would look at identifying obstacles. What might be getting in the way of you having a good sex life? What is it? It could be a belief, it could be trauma, it could be miscommunication, it could be so many things. So really, depending on the situation, look at what could be an obstacle. What is getting in the way? And can we address that? Because that is very personal to your relationship and to your situation. Next question. How can I navigate the feeling of loneliness in a long-distance relationship? I'm going to assume that the loneliness is because your partner isn't physically with you. If we were to have a conversation, if you were my client, I'd be asking you why you are feeling lonely, because loneliness, especially during a long-distance relationship, can be for different reasons. Maybe you're the only one in your social circle who is in a long-distance relationship. Maybe you are lacking the social circle, the hobbies, the interests, and so when your partner isn't available, for example, something is missing. And it's because you might be lacking, something outside of the relationship. Sometimes it's because our partner's actions are leading to us feeling lonely. And so I'd really ask you, why are you feeling lonely? Long distance relationships aren't easy. I have gone through over 4 years of long distance with Denis, so I get it. And the thing is that loneliness affects our mental health, it affects our well being, it affects our motivation, and it can affect the relationship. We are wired for connection, not for isolation. And so, if there's one thing that I've learned from our experience and from speaking to clients as well, it's that in a healthy relationship, you need to have a level of interdependence. That means you both value the importance of your bond, the relationship itself, and you have a solid sense of self. So you have you as an individual. You have the relationship, you have you as an individual, and you're able to have both. It's not just one or the other. And so if your partner is not physically there, there are two things that I'd recommend. The first one is align on what needs to happen for you to feel connected to your partner, despite the distance. Look at building certain habits, maybe, that could help you get through the distance as a couple. So, what are things that you and your partner can do to help you feel less lonely? The second is developing a sense of self outside of the relationship. And that means that you do things that fill your cup, that you personally enjoy doing too. Maybe you pick up hobbies that you had stopped when you got into the relationship. Maybe you reconnect with certain people. Maybe you join new circles of friends. You join a community. And so this is one that I know I've personally worked on myself, is developing that sense of self so that I have the relationship, ways to connect with my partner. We are developing habits to meet our needs in the relationship. And I'm also able to combat the loneliness individually as well. I have ways to fill my own cup if my partner isn't available one day. I have ways to take care of myself, to connect with other people. And these two things go hand in hand. That's called interdependence. And that's what characterizes a healthy relationship. On top of the interdependence, what I would say is knowing why you're doing long distance and seeing that as a necessary step, maybe to then the next steps in your relationship, can be really helpful, especially when you're feeling lonely. Is why are we even in a long distance relationship? What is the long-term gain of this? This can really help, and I know that helped me personally a lot in the process. Is we're doing this because we want to have a career, we want to grow in our jobs, we want to explore different places, and so we are doing this temporarily. And knowing that really helped with the loneliness. Whenever I'm feeling lonely, I'm also going to think of why I'm in this position. Some people have said long distance relationships don't work. Some people have literally told me, you're wasting your time. Why are you even doing that? It's just so hard. And so it really helps to know why you're doing it. I do have a whole series on Instagram about long distance relationships with quick tips that you can implement right away to feel closer to your partner, to better navigate that. And because of popular demand, I've also created a whole masterclass on that so that you know how to get started in a long distance relationship if you're considering it, how to navigate it, how to stay connected with your partner, and we really go deep in it. So you can have the quick tips on Instagram if you want to take it a step further. Definitely check out the masterclass that I'll link in the description below. All right. Next question, can trust be gained back in a relationship after a break or after a breakup? What to do when I'm in no contact? Yes, trust can be gained back if you're both willing to give it another chance. It's not the easiest process, but it's possible. I'll link a video in the description that walks you through 5 really important and even essential steps if you want to rebuild trust. Again, it's a process. I talk all about it in there, but it is possible if you do have those 5 steps in place. Then, when in no contact, what I would do is focus on you. Do things that fill your cup, that give you energy, that give you a sense of certainty, safety, because in a time where you're in no contact, there is a lot of uncertainty, maybe even anxiety involved, worries about what the future will look like. And so give yourself space to actually fill your cup and do things that give you stability, that give you predictability, that give you safety. That's a really important need, especially if you're feeling a lot of uncertainty in these times. That's one thing. And then, depending on the situation, you can still let your partner or ex-partner know that you're there when they're ready. For example, they're ready to talk, they're ready to have a conversation, they're ready to meet again. But if someone has clearly expressed that they do not want contact, or there is a no contact rule, there is a no contact period, it's usually best to respect that. If you break that boundary, if you overstep that boundary, then that can really break trust, and that can push them even further away, and that can lead to resistance as to even coming back into contact. So if they have set that boundary, I'd respect that. If they haven't necessarily been clear about that, then I'd drop in and say, hey, just wanted to let you know that I'm thinking of you, etc. If that feels appropriate in your situation, then that's something that you can also consider. So when in no contact, fill up your cup, make sure that you do things that give you that safety, stability, and you can always reach out if that is appropriate in your situation. But if the person has set a strong boundary around that, then respect that, because that can actually help create trust. If not, it can lead to resistance. I will be talking about breaks because it is quite a hot topic. I have to say, I get a lot of questions about breaks and what to do in a break, if a break is actually healthy, what my opinion is about it. And so I'll create a video on it pretty soon to share the benefits that a relationship can have from taking a break, and common mistakes that people make that actually sabotage the whole purpose of taking a break. I'll also share reasons why you would want to take a break, reasons that are actually not helpful to take breaks. And so I'll create that very soon. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to be informed and notified when that one is out. All right, next question. How to navigate the marriage process if parents aren't agreeable? So I'm curious to know if it's the process of getting married or marriage itself. I'm also curious to know if it's your in-laws or your own parents. So again, if we were to have a conversation, that's what I would be first asking you, and that can a little bit determine the approach. But either way, there are 3 things that I would recommend doing here. First is asking yourself, why are they not agreeable? And be very curious here. From personal experience with people around me, family members who weren't agreeable, being curious helped me cope better because I've gotten where they were coming from. And so you really want to be curious about why they might not be agreeable and understand that point of view, as that might give you answers. That's first things first. Be curious, why are they not agreeable? Second, when we grow up, there is a process of separation from our parents. We can still be close to them, but we do need to learn to reduce the noise that doesn't serve us. We do need to start to define what works for us, what are we not willing to accept, what are our boundaries, how do we communicate with our parents, and we do that by setting healthy boundaries. For example, if a parent isn't agreeable, gives you a nasty comment, a healthy boundary would look like, thanks for your comment, but we'd like to do XYZ thing differently. Or it can also be getting some space. If you see them frequently, for example, if you talk to them frequently, maybe it's reducing that frequency. So it's creating healthy boundaries around your relationships with family members, with people who are maybe not agreeable, who overstep your own boundaries. So knowing what your boundaries are and setting boundaries with other people. Healthy boundaries means that we don't shut other people out completely, unless it's necessary. That can sometimes be the case. But we also don't just let anything get in our space. We protect our space, we protect our energy, and we protect the relationship. And so healthy boundaries are anything that help us do that. So it's, I can stay close or connected with someone. I don't have to necessarily shut the door towards my parents, let's say, if they are not agreeable, but I can also create healthy boundaries so that I also protect my energy, my space, and my relationship. That's the process of separation from our parents, is setting those healthy boundaries, knowing what we want, knowing what we're willing to accept, what we're not willing to accept, and communicating that if we can communicate that, or create some space if the relationships are complicated and we can't necessarily have a conversation. I would then say, as a third thing, important to also work with your partner so that it feels like you're doing this as a team. It can be really hard to do this alone. And so do this as a team and ask yourselves, what do we want? What do I want? How can we support each other through this? What are our boundaries with these specific family members? How will we protect our relationship and our energy? What decisions do we maybe need to take? And how can we show up for each other in the moment as well, or after an interaction? So that's where that team effort comes in, is how can we support each other through that? All right, next question. This one is a personal one. How was marriage different from the period of loving Denis? So Denis and I married a few years ago. We've been together for 15, if you're new here. And I will just say, first of all, I still love Denis. I'd say even more than when we started dating. I know this might sound a little bit cheesy, but it's true. We've built so much trust and so much connection over the years that now it just feels like we're each other's go-to person. We feel very safe with each other, and the love is still there. It has grown, and I'm not saying it has always been perfect and roses. We've gone through our own set of challenges, and I talk a lot about that on Instagram, but also on here. And so overcoming our challenges has helped us develop really deep levels of trust. And I always say that trust isn't just created in good times. It's the way we navigate challenges and overcome challenges that determine our level of trust and connection. And that ability to overcome challenges gives us so much confidence in the relationship and brings us so much closer as well, if we're able to do that in a way that doesn't damage the connection. And I was reflecting on this earlier, is our relationship hasn't fundamentally changed after marriage, but marriage has become this sort of tangible sign of commitment. I changed my last name, we wear our rings, we call each other husband and wife, and so that's something very tangible. So yeah, that has changed. We have waited a long time to get married because of our studies, our careers. We did long distance, as I said before. So we don't take the relationship for granted now that we're married. And I think that's why we continue growing together. Marriage doesn't change the relationship. So yes, we have grown a lot together through our experiences. I believe that the fact that we don't take for granted that we're now married, that we're committed to each other, I think that really plays a big role. And that's what has changed in a way, but the relationship not. If you were to look, let's say, at your relationship as a timeline, marriage would be one point on that timeline. And that could be even having kids, getting engaged, moving in together. That's one point on your timeline, let's say. So whatever milestone you have in your relationship, that is one point. What is going on in your relationship before that point is going to continue after that point. If there are unaddressed issues before that point, that will come up in one way or another after that point. You as a person will not fundamentally change after that point. You are still you. You still have your communication styles, you have your personality, you have your habits. And so, yeah, you can change a lot of things, but if it isn't actively addressed or changed consciously, then things will just continue after that point. And so that's what I wish more people understood, because sometimes we expect a milestone to change things. Some points on these timelines do make a relationship worse. Some make a relationship better, yes, because we're actively maybe working on something. But again, objectively speaking, every point on that timeline doesn't change the relationship. The habits that we bring to the relationship are habits. And so it's really hard to change habits. It's possible, of course, but we bring our patterns to a relationship. We bring our habits. We bring our coping mechanisms. We bring, as I said before, our communication styles, all of that. And so those are hard things to change. And so, yes, we can marry, we can be engaged, but fundamentally we are us. And as long as we don't actively address something, then things won't magically change after we reach a certain milestone. I remember thinking that getting engaged would just be this ultimate thing where after that it would just be the honeymoon stage again. It was amazing. We had a nice high for a while, But then it's like it goes back to the baseline. I'm not saying it was bad. I'm just saying it goes back to the baseline. Then life continues, and then there's the next milestone. And that's kind of the thing is, yes, the relationship can get better. It can also get worse. But you want to look at these points as points. And great, we got married, we got engaged, whatever it is. But how is the relationship there? And I think we focused so much on making sure that the relationship was strong before we even got engaged. And I mentioned before the couples assessment that we did. We learned about our love languages, we learned about our needs, we learned how to communicate better. And that's why I say today that our love has grown, that I truly feel at peace being married to the person I'm married with today. I would not want to change that for anything because our baseline is really solid. And that's why I'm doing the work that I do. And so it's a wonderful thing to be married with my now husband, Denis, because the relationship is really good. And yes, we have our highs, we have our lows. There are days we annoy each other. There are days we have a miscommunication, we have an annoyance. Yes, we also have amazing moments together. And that's been the work of the relationship, that timeline that I was mentioning before. We focused more on that rather than just reaching these different milestones. And so we postponed marriage for a long time, and we really focused on making the relationship a really good place, a really safe space, a place where we could be authentic, where we felt connected, where it was something that kept growing. We were told many times that marriage would just make things worse. And after we got married, it would just go downhill. And that was just before getting married. So it was really interesting to see how that's a common belief that society has. And so we're not going to accept that. We're going to continue working on the relationship, going to continue learning how to make it better and how to be better partners for each other. That's where our focus was. And so that's why I say marriage hasn't fundamentally changed the relationship. It's a beautiful thing. We're really happy to have gotten married. That's that tangible commitment. And we love that part of our relationship. But the relationship in itself has been more of the focus. And so that's one of the learnings that I've had with the different milestones that we've gone through, and also seeing clients go through different milestones. So how was marriage different from Period of Loving Denis? It's different in the sense of it's that commitment, but the love has grown and the relationship has just gotten better. And it's not all picture perfect all the time. We're human. And at the same time, it is better than it has ever been. And so I'm really happy to have gotten to that stage of commitment and that stage of marriage. But I wish I had known that milestones don't fundamentally change the relationship unless you actively work on something. What I always recommend is looking at the relationship more than the next milestone that you want to reach. Next question. How to stop trying to correct each other and always being the one who knows better? 2-3 things here. First, when you're trying to correct your partner, when you always want to be right, when you always want to know better, remember what is more important: to feel close, to feel like a team, or to be right. What is more important? Second, know that there is no objective reality in any relationship. Each person has their own point of view. Each person has their own way of doing things. And so thinking that you know better or you have the right way to do it is just one side. We always want to consider the other person's side as well, if we want to be in a healthy relationship and want both people to be understood and feel like a team. It's understanding that there are two people, two points of views, two ways of doing things. And so can we be curious first instead of judging each other and trying to correct each other? And third is thinking about the cost of continuing to want to be right, to want to be the one who knows better, to want to correct our partner. What's the real cost of that? If I keep doing that, what will it lead to? What could it lead to? Will it lead to us feeling closer, feeling more loved, feeling more appreciated? Or will it lead to us feeling more disconnected and less like a team, more resentful, more frustrated? I'd really ask myself, what is the cost here? Is it bringing us closer or not? Is it serving the relationship or not? Is it serving my partner and myself? No. And so I think that's enough of a reason to stop, to be honest, is looking at the cost of it. And part of you will still want to correct, will still want to know better, if that's you're talking about. being right is one way to deal with situations. It's one way to respond to our partner. It's a coping mechanism that we've adopted due to past experiences. So I get it. We all have our own, let's say, go-to strategy when we get triggered, when our partner annoys us, when we want to prove a point, when we get annoyed. We have our coping strategies. We've developed a response. At the same time, I think of first, remembering what's more important. Second, remembering that there's no objective reality. And third, thinking about the cost. If I continue doing this, what will it lead to? Is it good for the relationship or not? Good for us or not? And that will take practice to replace that coping mechanism. So what you can do every single time is simply take a pause. Before you respond, take a pause. Start noticing when you want to correct your partner. And literally pause, take a deep breath, and then you can go, how do I choose to respond? Is it really important for me to prove my point here? Or is there another way that I could respond that could be better for the relationship? Can I be curious? Can I be more understanding? Can I share my point of view and say it's my point of view? I don't have to say it's their only right way to do things. Do I really have to correct my partner in this moment? Or can I let them do their own thing? Is it really important for me to correct? Is it really necessary in this situation to correct them? So that takes practice. It's a muscle to build, and it's absolutely possible to build that muscle, but it takes intentional practice. So that's where I would start. I'm going to get to the last two questions here. What to do if one person has trouble expressing emotions? First, someone who has trouble expressing emotions needs a safe space to talk, needs to feel safe. When there is no judgment, there is safety. When they don't feel forced into the conversation, they can feel safe. So safety, safety, safety. That's number one. How can I help my partner feel safe, if we're talking about your partner here, in this conversation? Other thing is, if it's your partner having trouble expressing emotions, I'd be mindful if you are maybe projecting your expectations of how they should be expressing their emotions. People express emotions in different ways. Some express them more than others because of their personality, because of their communication style, because of their upbringing. Some are more expressive than others. That's just a fact. And so I also want to notice, am I saying that my partner's having trouble expressing emotions because I want them to express emotions more because that's what I value? So I would be mindful, if that's your situation, to look at that honestly and know that every person has their own way of expressing it. I can create a safe space, I can do that, but if my partner is more of the rational type or doesn't necessarily value expressing their emotions as expressively as me, then that might not be wrong. That might be their way of communicating. That might be their way of processing certain emotions just differently than me and expressing them differently than me. So can I accept that? Can I accept who they are and see that that's their way of doing things? I'm not saying they can't express themselves more, but what is my expectation here? Being with someone who is more rational, who doesn't necessarily express his emotions as openly as I do, one thing that's been helpful is not forcing him into expressing his emotions and going, what are you feeling? I want you to be more expressive. So not forcing that onto him, and also seeing that he has his own way of expressing himself. If he feels safe enough, he will open up. He will be authentic. And that's what truly counts, is can I let someone be who they are and let them be authentic and accept that they might not necessarily be as expressive as me. So take or leave what I'm saying, of course, depending on your situation. But keep that in mind. Create that safe space. Make sure that you are creating safety for someone who has trouble expressing emotions. There are many reasons why someone might not be able to express their emotions. It could be, again, personality. It can even be trauma. It can even be things that they have not learned how to do. And so, can I understand my partner first and then go, what is the best approach here? That's what I would recommend. Last question I'll get to. Would you do long distance now if you had to? So I mentioned that we did 4+ years of long distance with Denis. At some point, he was in London, I was in Switzerland. At some point, I was in Asia and he was in Switzerland. And so our paths kind of crossed there. So a few years of long distance. I'd say yes, if it was because either me or him wanted to pursue a big dream, wanted to pursue something that required us to do long distance again, then we'd do it. Just because we would want to avoid the resentment of not taking up an opportunity that's really, really important for us. And that's what we did beforehand. That's why we did long distance. We were in that mindset of we might as well do it now so that we don't regret it later and so that we don't resent each other for not taking up an opportunity that was really important to us. So if we were to do it again, it would have to be for something that's really, really important to us. I'd say at the same time, it's not ideal because now we love living together. We have postponed living together for 12 years. But again, I know that we'd rather pay the price of the distance now than the price of regret later. And again, that approach really helped us during the long distance years. So if you're going through a long distance relationship, if you're in one right now, or you are considering one, I'd always look at why are we doing the distance? Why are we willing to be in a long distance relationship? That why can really help you get through it and navigate those challenges together. All right. I will be addressing more in future Q&As. So again, stay tuned on my Instagram stories. You will be able to drop questions there that I will respond more in depth here. And I appreciate you for being here today. Thanks for joining.